This video will show you how to multiply and divide rational expressions. Rational expressions are just fractions that contain polynomials. Let's take a look at the first example. We would like to, it says multiply or divide, and then we want to simplify our final answer. In this case, we're going to multiply, so the same rules for multiplying any two fractions. We always multiply the numerator times the numerator and denominator times denominator. In this case, the first step for these problems is to factor everything completely. So we need to start by factoring, and once we have factored, then we could start reducing the fractions if possible. So let's start by factoring the first fraction in the numerator. So that's just a regular trinomial that we have seen in the previous video. And so in order to factor this, there's no GCF, so we just write 2 parentheses. And we need factors of 2, so that's going to be 2x and x. The signs will be opposite. And factors of 5 are going to be 1 and 5. And then just make sure you check your problem here. Make sure that this is correct. Moving on to the denominator, that is a difference of 2 squares. We already know how to factor that. X plus 5, x minus 5. Second fraction in the numerator, we have another trinomial. There's no GCF, so we just factor it. Factors of 3 are going to be 3x and x. And then the signs will be opposite, so minus and plus. It matters where you put the signs, by the way, so make sure you're putting them in the correct place. Factors of 10 that would work are 2 and 5. And then again, you have to make sure you check your work, and so that this is actually factored correct, because when we check, we get positive 13x. And then the denominator there is a difference of 2 squares. Once everything is factored completely, we can reduce common factors. For example, your common factor, one should be at the top, one should be at the bottom, and then we could reduce it. So I could reduce those two. I can also reduce x plus 5 with the bottom x plus 5, and also 2x plus 1 with 2x plus 1. So we can only reduce when we have the same factor, one at the top, one at the bottom. And then we just basically write whatever is left over. So our answer here would be 3x minus 2 over 2x minus 1. We cannot reduce this anymore. This will be your final answer. Let's take a look at one more example for division. So in this case, we want to divide two rational expressions. The steps for division will be very similar. We need to start by first reducing or completely factoring everything. And also the rule for division for fractions is that you need to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So we need to change this to a multiplication problem and then reciprocal of the second fraction. So what I'm going to do is just start factoring the first fraction first. In the numerator, we can factor out a greatest common factor of 2. So we get 4n squared minus 9. That is still factorable. It's a difference of 2 squares. We'll do that in the next step. We also need to factor the denominator, which is a regular trinomial. So we should have 2n and n. The signs are both negative in this case, and factors of 3 would be 3 and 1. Again, make sure you're placing your factors in the correct location so that you get negative 5n. At this point, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. It's always the reciprocal of the second fraction. So I'm trying to factor this trinomial. This will be in the numerator now. So we need to factor that. So when we factor, we should get n, both signs are negative, and then 8 and 1. And then we need to factor the last trinomial, which is now in the denominator, this one. So we're going to factor that, again, 2 parentheses, and we just factor. So 6 should break up into 3n and 2n. The signs are opposite. So we have 1 and 3. And again, make sure you check your work. You need to get back to positive 7, which we do. At this point, I still need to factor this difference of squares. So I'm just going to do that in the next step really quick. That's 2n minus 3, 2n plus 3. Everything else gets recopied. And from here we reduce, so I can reduce n minus 1, I can reduce 2n plus 3, and I can also reduce 2n minus 3. And we're just left with 2, our final answer will be 2 times n minus 8 all over 3n minus 1. That is the completely simplified solution, and this is our last example.